Mr. Speaker, I present the National Trade Bill of 2023.
Mr. Clark.
To give effect to the national goals and directive principles of the Constitution in development of the economy through trade, and B, to regulate domestic and international trade, and C, to provide for the establishment of the National Trade Office and for related purposes.
Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be now read a second time.
Make your speech.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to this Honourable House and the people of Papua New Guinea the National Trade Bill of 2023. Mr. Speaker, successive governments have aspired towards achieving a robust economic growth for our country. The PNG Vision 2050 specifically notes the importance of diversifying the economy by promoting and expanding trade and investment in the country. Therefore, the National Trade Bill is set out to contribute towards achieving this goal. Mr. Speaker, the National Trade Policy 2017 to 2032 declares the goal of developing the Papua New Guinea economy as an attractive and competitive international trading market, and reiterates PNG's commitment to the multilateral trading system. Although PNG has existing trade relations with other countries under bilateral and regional trade agreements and other related treaty arrangements, there has not been any significant increase in trade volumes nor improvement in our trading capacity over the last 47 years. Mr. Speaker, this was due to the absence of a competent and dedicated office with a clear legislative mandate for coordinating PNG's efforts in addressing capacity issues for trade facilitating agencies, improving supply and production issues, negotiating new trade agreements, and meeting export market requirements. For the last 47 years, PNG has been making reactive, uncoordinated, and ad hoc decisions on trade matters which have resulted in inconsistent and at times even conflicting decisions on trade issues, duplication of trade roles and responsibilities, and the wastage of government time and resources. Mr. Speaker, further, the trade function has been continuously transferred between the Department of Foreign Affairs and Commerce and Industry as a division where its activities and programs were not given priority. The shifts in the trade function between the ministries occurred about 14 times since independence, which also resulted in the loss of institutional knowledge and memory, lack of proper coordination in trade negotiations, trade policy formulation and implementation, and as a consequence, trade and the economic interest of this country has been compromised. Mr. Speaker, this is one of the reasons why our friends from the Pacific are able to export taro, ginger, banana, and other handicrafts to the Australian and New Zealand market, while PNG hasn't been able to do so over the last 47 years. Despite the fact that we represent over 80% of the population and land mass in the region, we cannot get our agriculture and fisheries products into Australia and New Zealand markets. This is because they have a coordinating entity with a legal framework and the necessary support, unlike Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, while the international trade trends have been consistently changing in the world and especially in the Asia-Pacific region. PNG's international trade landscape has remained virtually unchanged. PNG has one bilateral agreement and 3 regional trade agreements. In contrast, our main trading partners, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and the wider Asian region, have expanded their trade regimes to secure better markets for their goods and services. Mr. Speaker, a classic example is Australia and New Zealand both now have free trade agreements with Indonesia and China. We haven't even started. Mr. Speaker, for the noting of this Honourable House, our market preferences under the trade agreements we have are quickly eroding due to our competitors securing better market deals with our partners. To give you an example, Papua New Guinea's market access for fisheries products into the EU market is facing steep competition from the more efficient producers such as Thailand and the Philippines. Mr. Speaker, to give you one example, I'll talk about fish. Papua New Guinea fish is caught in PNG waters and sent to canneries in the Philippines, and the same fish is canned into a Filipino can and sent to the same European market that competes with our fish. And they're getting access to that market because they can produce it far cheaper than we can. And they are becoming a major threat to our national interest. Our own fish being branded as fish from the Philippines and going in and competing in the same market which we have duty-free market access. This, Mr. Speaker, this is an immediate and urgent call for Papua New Guinea to have a competent and dedicated office with a clear legal mandate to identify, negotiate, and secure new and better market access for our goods and services. It also promotes transparency and predictability in trade policy formulation, trade negotiations, and trade policy implementation in the country. Mr. Speaker, the Maru government is committed to addressing these issues, beginning with establishing an international trade and investment ministry. And I thank the Prime Minister for this foresight and for entrusting me with this newly created ministry. I also had the honor as Trade Minister in 2017 of introducing the National Trade Policy and SME Policy and Master Plan, and now I have the honor of presenting the National Trade Bill to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, to put it succinctly, the bill therefore seeks to address the need for the anchorage of the trade policy function of government, as well as giving the legal mandate to the newly established National Trade Office to carry out its powers and functions as envisioned under the trade policy. Mr. Speaker, the bill serves to clearly define the functions of the ministry and the trade policy administration, which has been lacking since independence. Mr. Speaker, establishing the National Trade Office was a critical step towards establishing a regulatory framework to support the implementation of the trade policy. As an initial step in realizing this, the NEC, under its decision 99 of 2017, approved the administrative setup of the office pursuant to Section 33 of the Public Service Management Act of 1995. The office was physically established in 2020 with a dedicated office space and budget appropriation. While the National Trade Office is established through an NEC decision, it requires the enabling legislation to effectively undertake its roles, functions, and responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, the launching of the policy are milestones in the realization of the regulatory framework. It has not achieved the necessary levels of independence and predictability required of an entity that the government intends to oversee a multi-faceted economic driver that will connect Papua New Guinea businesses and consumers to the rest of the world. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, the legislative framework will stabilize the trade function and now allow the office to coordinate and provide guidance in the trade policy decision-making process involving trade regulators and trade actors to effectively address the adverse trade impacts identified in the policy in a more coordinated, constructive, consistent, and monitored manner. PNG's merchandise trade over the years has shown varying performance, recording surpluses, especially in the extractive sector, while we do very poorly in terms of performance in the non-extractive sector, such as with the case of our trade with Australia, where 98% of our exports are concentrated in the extractive sector, mainly gold. Mr. Speaker, to give you some perspective, annually PNG only sells 60 million in goods like coffee and cocoa to Australia, while Australia exports 600 million to Papua New Guinea. We can't even get our fresh fish and canned fish into Australia. This is the reality. PNG's merchandise trade over the years, we have not done very well. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, PNG's overall exports are concentrated in few commodities which are exported in either raw form or are semi-processed. This includes minerals, oil palm, coffee, copra, and cocoa, to name a few. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we have continued to import basic goods such as rice, meat products, fruits, veggies, and dairy products with huge import bills, even though PNG is capable and can produce all this in country. Mr. Speaker, PNG's reliance on a few export commodities for foreign currency earnings and the lack of import substitution on basic food items has caused the unbalanced trade performance that is weakening the country's GDP growth and our foreign reserves. It is also contributing to the social fallout that we are seeing as our young people are leaving secondary and tertiary education and cannot find jobs. Jobs created from import substitution activities such as fruit and the farming of veggies and livestock breeding and meat production can address the unemployment issue in this country, as well as reduce the reliance on imports of basic foodstuff. Mr. Speaker, the following is a summary of the salient features of the bill. Number one, it starts with introducing provisions that succinctly explain the purpose of the bill, ensuring compliance with constitutional requirements, and highlights the application of other relevant laws. Number two, the establishment of office as a statutory body with corporate personality which possesses the appropriate levels of bureaucratic autonomy. Mr. Speaker, this bill further provides for the insertion of necessary checks and balances through the establishment of an unambiguous governance structure with a board as the main oversight body. A clear scope concerning the exercise of functions and powers in trade matters. Creation of the position of the Chief Trade Officer as the head of the office. A clear mechanism for reporting between the various bodies established under the bill, including reporting lines to the minister responsible and the requisite financial administrative provisions. Mr. Speaker, therefore, the functions of the office can be synthesized into the following four areas: to provide leadership and policy advice on the implementation of the policy and trade matters across all sectors, to spearhead the development and improvement of policy negotiations, promotion and regulations of trade, and advise government accordingly, to coordinate and maintain oversight across all sectors on the implementation of the trade policy, and to play an advisory role of oversight for regulatory and facilitating agencies of government on trade-related issues. Mr. Speaker, honorable members will note that the composition of the board is quite unique as it includes heads of trade facilitating agencies that have previously been operating in isolation instead of working together to facilitate trade. Therefore, being on the board will allow the coordination and collaboration between these key trade facilitating agencies on issues that directly impact PNG's ability to export and meeting the partner countries' market requirements. The membership also includes the office responsible for Bougainville affairs, so Bougainville has a seat on the board to enhance the information sharing in building the institutions to grow the economy. Mr. Speaker, the bill has extra territorial application and establishes the coordination role of the office concerning reporting and disseminating information on specific matters prescribed under the multilateral trading system as it relates to the mandate of other national regulatory bodies such as NICIT, NACIA, and Customs, amongst others. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, the trade actors and regulators are governed by different legislation, ministerial determinations, and other functional responsibilities that come under different jurisdictions of different government institutions, including the private sector. The National Trade Office only has the coordinating, oversight, and facilitating role in trade policy development and implementation. Hence, the office requires the legal mandate to perform its role effectively in coordinating trade policy development and implementation, which cut across all the sectors overlapping other state agencies' functional responsibilities. Additionally, the office also deals with international trade agreements and conventions that are legally binding. One of its functional responsibilities is to take the lead in negotiating legally binding trade agreements. This requires an institution that has the legal mandate to negotiate and enter into legally binding agreements on behalf of the state with the appropriate budget support. To sum up, Mr. Speaker, the bill will ensure that appropriate linkages are established between all relevant stakeholders, both domestic and international, for Papua to achieve the national trade policy vision of becoming an internationally competitive, export-driven economy that is built on and aided by an efficient and expanding domestic market. Mr. Speaker, in the long term, gains from a robust trade policy and the proposed national trade bill will contribute to alleviating poverty, creating employment, and advancing PNG's social and economic well-being. Even more so, trade has been identified by several international organizations such as the World Bank as a tool to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic going forward. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it is anticipated that the successful enactment of the bill will be another legacy achievement that demonstrates that the Maru-based Rosso government is serious about its commitment to undertake reforms necessary for Papua New Guinea's economic prosperity. I would therefore appreciate the support from the Honourable Membership of this House for this important bill. I now commend the National Trade Bill 2023 to this Honourable House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.